Coping with COVID and In It Together present Wellness Wednesday, brought to you by the Diabetes Advisory Council of South Carolina and DHEC's Division of Diabetes and Heart Disease Management.
Coping with COVID with Trey Taylor.
Fight the spread and take a stand against coronavirus. Wear a mask in public. Stay at least 6 feet apart from others. And get tested. Join us and fight the spread. Visit scdhec.gov/COVID-19.
It's Wellness Wednesday, and that means In It Together SC and the South Carolina Diabetes Advisory Council present Wellness Wednesday here on Coping with COVID. Good afternoon. I'm Trey Taylor, and today we're going to talk with Dr. Jane Kelly. If you remember, she is the assistant epidemiologist with the state of South Carolina. She's been on the show several times, and she joins us again today to give us some updates on COVID and the vaccine. Plus, did you know there is a direct link between smoking and diabetes? Yeah, I didn't know that either. Well, Catherine Warner, who works with DHEC's Office of Tobacco Prevention, shares this interesting information coming up next on Coping with COVID. Catherine, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We look forward to the conversation. That and more coming up next on Coping with COVID. But first, your COVID community updates. Well, history was made in Georgia last night as Raphael Warnock became the first African-American senator in that state and the first Black Democrat to represent a southern state in the Senate. The pastor who spent the last 15 years leading the Atlanta church where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. preached beat Republican incumbent Kelly Loeffler in the runoff.
A son of my late father, who was a pastor, a veteran, and a small businessman, and my mother, who as a teenager growing up in Waycross, Georgia, used to pick somebody else's cotton. But the other day, because this is America, the 82-year-old hands that used to pick somebody else's cotton went to the polls and picked her youngest son to be a United States Senator. So I come before you tonight as a man who knows that the improbable journey that led me to this place in this historic moment in America could only happen here. We were told that we couldn't win this election. But tonight, we prove that with hope, hard work, and the people by our side, anything is possible.
Democrat John Ossoff is currently in the lead in the other Georgia Senate race against Republican David Perdue, but that one has not been called yet. And today's congressional joint session going on now to confirm President-elect Biden's Electoral College one could get contentious today as over 100 members of Congress are set to challenge the typically ceremonial event. President Trump is staging a rally outside the White House opposing the election. And the Walmart on Bush River Road in Columbia is closing. The retailer says the store will begin liquidating merchandise due to low sales. The pharmacy will close on January 22nd. The store closes their doors in February, and all employees are eligible to transfer to other stores, including Sam's Club and other Walmart stores. SCDHEC continues their ongoing COVID testing in and around South Carolina. For more information, visit scdhec.org for times, dates, and locations. Now, you will see current testing sites scrolling at the bottom of the screen. Also, if you would like to get tested, you can visit gogettested.com to find out the closest location for free tests statewide. You can also make an appointment and get your results in 48 hours. If you want information about organizing a COVID screening in your event or at your community, you can also get that information. It's right there on the screen, and we'll be scrolling throughout the program. And if you would like to get more information about the virus and transportation to get a test, call the DHEC Care Line. Now, speaking of transportation, if you are immobile and unable to get transportation, Richland and Clarendon County paramedics are actually doing in-home COVID screenings. Call 911 Monday through Friday between 8 and 5 for more information. Prisma also is doing flu shots. You can see some information on the screen right now about where you can get your free flu shot courtesy of Prisma in the upstate and in the Midlands. Now, the South Carolina Bar Association and SC Legal Services continue to offer a free toll-free number and website for rental and mortgage help. And the City of Columbia offers their 6-month payment plan for water bills and payment assistance up to 75%. Both of those programs are still going on in 2021. If you are still having challenges with homeschooling and working from home, Rashonda Pratt has actually dedicated an entire YouTube page with tips and information. Visit Rashonda Pratt's YouTube page for more information about virtual learning and working. Are you or someone you know a graduating high school senior? Well, there is a free scholarship available from the South Carolina Association of Counties. That deadline is in February. So go on that website and find out about how you can get a $2,500 scholarship every year that you're in college. Also, if you're in the market for a job, Richland One is hiring. They're doing their virtual job fair January 15th. They have signing bonuses if you are a special education or foreign language teacher. And also, they are looking for bus drivers. Also, signing bonuses are also available for bus drivers in Richland One. Now, if one of your goals for the new year is to launch your nonprofit, Richland County Councilwoman Gretchen Barron is sponsoring a nonprofit seminar. She's going to take you step by step to launching your nonprofit. At the end of the seminar, all you have to do is hit send and you will have your nonprofit. That's happening January 9th, and you can see that information on the screen. All right, SCDHEC In It Together, South Carolina, and the Diabetes Advisory Council present Wellness Wednesday every Wednesday right here on Coping with COVID. And if you want more information about a diabetes prevention program, visit the website, the In It Together website, or their Facebook page. You can see it right there for more information to help you get started. Also, Coping with COVID is actually streaming live on the In It Together Facebook page. I want to thank all of you for watching and inform you and encourage you to please hit like on that In It Together Facebook page. We're also streaming live on the Taylor Made Production Facebook page. That's the home of Coping with COVID. Please also hit like and share for Coping with COVID and all of your COVID-related updates. Also want to thank those folks that are watching us on YouTube. When I'll ask you to hit the subscribe button, and we're also on Instagram. I'm Trey Taylor, and you're watching Coping with COVID, updates on the pandemic and information to help you thrive and survive COVID-19. And it is 2021, and we are still thriving and surviving COVID-19. Gosh, it's almost been a year. It was March when COVID virtually hit the fan. And luckily, not only are we dealing with it, but we do have a vaccine in place. Dr. Jane Kelly, who is the assistant epidemiologist, joins us again today. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Kelly.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me back.
Absolutely. Happy New Year. Did you have a good holiday?
Yes, thank you. Happy New Year to you as well.
Thank you. I want to remind everyone to please post and share this information out so we can get the message to the masses, because the goal of Coping with COVID is to give you credible information and in a long form so that you can not only find out the information you need, cut through the rumors and the innuendos, and to give you one-on-one access to folks that you may not have access to. Lee Flowers is watching. Thank you, Lee, so much for watching. We appreciate it. So listen, Dr. Kelly, can you update us about COVID and the vaccine in general? I've got some specific questions, but in general, can you give us a general update?
Sure. There are two vaccines that are approved, authorized for emergency use in the United States, the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine. They're actually very similar. They're both based on a little bit of genetic code, a gene from the virus. So it does not have a live virus or a whole virus in it. You can't get COVID-19 from it. It's just got the one gene for a particular protein in the virus. And the two vaccines right now are being used in South Carolina and, in fact, throughout the United States. Right now, we've got one vaccine going to people who live in nursing homes and long-term care facilities, skilled nursing homes, as well as assisted living, and to some independent living facilities, as well as to hospital workers in healthcare settings who are at increased risk of exposure to COVID-19. Once we've got that rolled out to those two groups, then we'll be able to make it more available to people in the general public who are at increased risk for severe disease with COVID-19, and for people who are frontline essential workers who are at risk. And the biggest challenge right now is just limited number of doses that we have available. They're making the vaccines as quickly as they safely can, but they have to go through various quality assurance measures before they ship them out to states. So every week we get some new shipments of the 2 different vaccines.
Well, I actually want to ask you about that, the amount of vaccines. But first, I want to ask about this new strain of COVID. What is going on with that? How did that develop?
Well, first, I just want everyone to understand that, viruses mutate. Viruses mutate a lot. And we don't usually talk about it because most mutations don't have any significance. By a mutation, I mean that a protein gets changed, or one of the RNA molecules that's part of the gene, maybe one of them gets traded out or deleted or a new one added. Most of those mutations don't affect anything. They're random and they're insignificant. The new strain that I think you're talking about, the new variant, is in England, and it has more than one mutation. It has several mutations to the protein, that spike protein that attaches that's what gets the virus into the cell. And so there was concern about, well, what does that new mutation mean? Is it, not important, or does it mean it can get the virus into the cell more efficiently? And so there is some evidence that might be true, that maybe this mutation leads to increased contagion, increased transmission, that it's easier to get the virus into the cell. We don't know that for sure. There are a lot of things. What do we know? We know that this variant has emerged in England. We know that it is here in the United States as well.
Right.
In fact, it's been in our neighboring state of Georgia. What we don't know is whether it really causes increased transmission, or it's just part of this surge after the holidays. There has been an increase in cases because of people's behavior too. People want to get together with friends and family to celebrate. So is the fact that it is becoming more predominant, is that because of behavior or biology? That we don't know.
Right. So do we know, based on what you said, do we know how specifically it's different? Because all of that you said sounded great with the DNA and the ABC, but nobody knows what you're talking about. But you.
Well,
my eyes just glazed over. I'm like, can you break it down for us?
Yes, ma'am. And I do tend to give too much detail.
No, it's okay.
But the detail is important, because you have to ask yourself, well, how do you know? When they say, oh, yeah, this one's worse, it's got more transmission. Well, how do you know that?
Right.
And so same thing with their important questions like, well, does this mean the vaccine won't work? If this is different.
That was going to be my next question.
Well, that is a chemistry question. That is getting down in the weeds of the molecule. But if rather than going through the details of that, let me say this. There is no reason to think the vaccine would not work for this. Yes, there have been a couple of mutations, a couple of things changed in this protein, but the vaccine is to the protein as a whole, not just to one little bit of it.
Okay.
So, one little bit of it changed. Maybe that makes it, more contagious, maybe not. But the important thing is that the vaccine still works.
Okay. All right. And so basically there is a new strain. It is in the United States. Don't really know how it developed. And
well, mutations like this happen all the time. They're the exact same mutation happened in South Africa, in the country of South Africa, but they're not related. It's a spontaneous thing. Their mutations in viruses go on all the time.
So it's not surprising. And while scientists may not have known it was happening, it's no surprise that it happened.
It's no surprise. And the reason scientists know that it's happening is because we are monitoring that.
Right.
When you get tested for COVID-19, you might only get the yes, no answer to your test. But behind the scenes, they're looking at the genetic code to look for new strains like this, new variants.
So is it just as contagious, and do you get the same symptoms?
It looks like it is at least just as contagious. And yes, you get the new symptoms. It does not look like it causes worse disease. People are not more likely to get hospitalized or more likely to die or get complications.
Okay. All right, great. And how likely is it to spread?
Well, it is likely to spread. I mean, we're seeing a surge in South Carolina. And so this new variant is just as likely to spread throughout South Carolina. The more we can keep our measures of preventing spread of disease, I brought with me some show and tell masks. If we want to talk a little bit about masks, the more we can do things with maintaining distance, wearing masks, the better we can contain this new variant.
Yeah, we're talking to Dr. Jane Kelly. She is the assistant state epidemiologist here in South Carolina. We're getting some updates on the vaccine and COVID. I want to thank everybody for watching Coping with COVID, End It Together SC, and the South Carolina Diabetes Council Advisory Council present Coping with COVID every Wednesday here on Coping with COVID. Please continue to post and share this information out so we can get the message to the masses, because it's so much misinformation out there. Our goal is to get the right information out there. So, Dr. Kelly, I read a very interesting article last week that scientists were testing breast milk as a treatment for COVID. Have you heard about that?
I have not, but I wonder if they're testing this for women who have had COVID and they want to know if they're putting the antibodies in their breast milk. Was that what the article is about?
Yes.
Yeah. So we do know this from other diseases and from other vaccines. For example, if a woman has been vaccinated, the routine vaccines, influenza, pneumonia vaccine, all those other diseases, she passes on the antibodies to those diseases in her breast milk. So the same thing would be true with COVID. If a woman had COVID and now she's recovered from it and she is breastfeeding, she will pass those antibodies on to her infant.
Wow. Mitchell Peach, Joy Jen, thanks for watching, beautiful. She wants to know, is it helpful to know the science behind COVID-19?
I think it's helpful because people have to make individual decisions. Right. And so when you look for information, I don't want you to just, when I say, oh yeah, the vaccine works for the new variant, I don't want you to just trust me on that. I would think you'd want to know, well, why? Why can you say that? How can you say that? And my answer is I can say that because I know the vaccine goes to the whole protein, not just the one little piece where there was a mutation. That's why I think it's helpful.
Hey, Mitchell, thank you so much for your question. I want to ask you also, excuse me, and Dr. Bell was on last week talking extensively the whole hour about the vaccine. We're so appreciative of the information she shared. But you have to know, particularly in Black and Brown communities, there is such a concern, a fear even of vaccines in general, just because of the history, behind people of color and vaccines. What can you say to folks to maybe help ease their fears? I mean, I was just on a kind of a social media exchange just a couple of days ago where, people were saying, one, which, you and Dr. Bell have already talked about, the quickness of how the vaccine came about. And of course, we know they've been working on it, since SARS, because this is a form of SARS. And then people were saying that it hasn't been tested enough. Have there been enough people of color in the trials? You say what, Dr. Kelly?
No, those are excellent questions, because I think in the past, an awful lot of trials for medications, for vaccines, have been with white men. They exclude women, they exclude people of color. But I can say for both of these two new vaccines, for both Pfizer and Moderna, in the United States, 10% of participants were African American for both of those vaccines, and 13 to 15% were people of Hispanic Latino descent. There were also inclusion of Asian Americans and American Indian and Alaska Natives in smaller numbers. So certainly in the trials, when they were testing the vaccine, they included people of color. But I think beyond that, you have to consider the fact that we've had more than 2 million people in this country vaccinated since the authorization. And these are people in healthcare settings. And to some extent, some of these are the most informed people to make a judgment call on whether a vaccine is safe because they're in healthcare settings. So personally, I find it reassuring to know that those individuals are vaccinated, but Each of us has to make their own decision. I would urge people to, look at what information is emerging right now. What are we learning right now? If you're concerned that, not enough people were tested, well, consider the fact that we've had more than 2 million people vaccinated in this country now with this authorization.
Of all races.
Of all races, absolutely. And so what have we heard about that? Well, we heard there were a couple of allergic reactions, not anything that put anyone in the hospital, but allergic reactions that needed to be treated with an adrenaline shot. But I'm not surprised at that. A couple of million vaccines and you get 3 allergic reactions, that's to be expected.
Yeah. Mitchell Peace Joy Jen says it seems like the benefits of the vaccine outweigh the risk of COVID.
Always one needs it for any judgment in life. You need to weigh the risks and the benefits. The risks right now of not getting vaccinated are your risks of contracting COVID, which depends upon your job, your family,
Right.
how much you're out there. And also the risk of, if you got it, would you have severe disease?
Right.
Are you someone who's living with diabetes or HIV or a family member of someone like that?
Right.
who's
If you're
more
high
vulnerable?
risk.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about that in just a minute, but Michelle Harris wants to know, Dr. Kelly, are K95 masks worth the extra cost?
I'm glad you asked the question about masks, because I would like to put in a plug about masks and what to look
please.
for in a mask. So it depends upon your exposure. The reason people have those KN95 masks is because they are at highest risk. So we're talking about the nurse in the intensive care unit setting who's working one-on-one with a person who's severely ill with COVID-19. So their exposure is extremely high. For most of us, our exposure is lower, but it exists. So is it worth the extra cost? Well, not for me, for going to the grocery store. On the other hand, it is worth investing in a decent mask. And if you don't mind, I'll take a minute to talk about
Yeah, please.
masks.
Go right ahead.
I have several that I'd like to show. This particular mask, not to plug a particular company, but I want to show you what I like about it. What I like is that it has adjustable, where can I hold it? It's got adjustable ear things. It also has 2 layers on the inside of different materials. The inner layer is a nice soft cotton, which it feels nice against my face. The outer layer has this, I don't know how well I can show it. I apologize. But you see that it's almost like cotton batting. It's not just smooth cotton. It's almost like that got some extra fuzziness, like that you would have with quilting if you were making a quilt. It also has a pocket. And so you can put an extra piece of material into the pocket. And there are a number of different filters that you can use. And I'm not finding my filter. Sorry. I'm going to call them never mind. Here it is.
Okay.
An extra filter that you can insert into the pocket to add a 3rd layer. Now, what's important here is 2 layers is the minimum. Don't use a mask that's just 1 layer. Don't just take a gaiter or your turtleneck sweater and put it over your face. That's not adequate. It's going to get wet, moist from your breathing in and out. And if anybody did cough or shout in your direction and spread viral particles in your direction, that's not going to protect you.
Right, you're good.
These 2 layers. I really like this mask because it's got that little insert place so I can put in my 3rd layer. I come home, I take it, first thing I do, take it off, drop it in the sink and wash it. Just washing it, soap and water. Take the little insert out.
Every day.
We've got a bunch of different masks. And I'm going to show you another mask. This one looks like it's just for fun, right? But and it's just for fun. But I'll tell you, it's got some good features. It's got 2 different types of material, and it's got a pocket, so I can put in that 3rd layer. So even some of the masks that you can get, at the local store, and they look like they're just trendy or they're for the holidays. The features to look for are 2 different layers and a pocket, and ideally adjustable ear things. Now, this does not have an adjustable ear thing, but you can tie a knot into it, put it to yourself. And the other thing that it doesn't have is it doesn't have a nose piece. So think about if I put this on and pull it down around my chin, I've got this gap here. And that's not good. But you can buy glue on adjustable nose pieces so that you can
Oh,
get it formatted to your face.
okay. All
The
right.
one, I just want to show one last mask and then I'll stop.
Yeah. No. Go right ahead.
This one, which we bought in packages of 50, my husband likes because he doesn't like the ear things. He likes being able to tie it behind him like that and tie it behind on the lower part. The advantage of this one is it was cheap. We bought 50 of them. They're cloth. You can wash them. And they're actually 3 layers. And you can order them from online.
Really? So Marvell wants to know, and thank you, Marvell, for joining us. She says, so are gaiters not good?
Gaiters are okay if you wear 2 layers. They need to have 2 layers. So there are gaiters that are 2 layers, but make sure they got the 2.
Right. Just as long as you're putting them on your feet, Marvell. Alligator shoes are good. Alligator that or gator gas. But anyway, thank you so much for that. That's good to know. Oh yes, and Michelle says thank you so much for saying that about gators. Yeah, because we see a lot of that. I mean, they're cuter, they're cooler, seem to be. So there is a probably I think a demographic of people that enjoy wearing those gaiters. We're talking to Dr. Jane Kelly. She is the Assistant State Epidemiologist for South Carolina. I want to talk a little bit about, in this couple of minutes we have left with you, Dr. Kelly, about vaccine distribution. Now, we heard the governor say that the process was slow, he said. And what is the process and why are they, according to the governor, so many more doses left than there are people who have gotten the vaccine?
Very important questions. There have been some definite challenges with rolling out the vaccine. And let's talk about in South Carolina, it was the Pfizer vaccine that came out first, and we sent it to hospital settings.
Okay.
The challenge with the Pfizer one, that's the one that has to be kept super cold, like minus 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So there are real challenges in maintaining that cold chain and getting it out to hospitals. And then you've got a limited amount of time once you thaw it out in which you have to use it. And so plus this was over the holidays. And I think there was staffing challenges at the hospitals,
Right.
not only because of the holidays, but also because of the increased number of people being hospitalized with severe COVID-19. So there weren't enough people to do the vaccinations 24/7 to get them into arms. So there was definitely some slowness in getting that vaccine out, but that's being addressed right now. We've got new people who are being hired to help assist the hospitals with vaccinations. And, this is not a unique South Carolina problem. I don't say that to excuse it, but just to point out that these are challenges that everyone in the nation are facing. In fact, I think South Carolina right now is at about 33% vaccine utilization, meaning of the doses that are in the hospital, how many have been given out. And that's not really fair. That's how many have been entered into the data system. So it's more than that. Sometimes it's just not been entered into the data system. But nationwide, we're at 20%. So I just want people to understand that there have been unique challenges as a brand new thing, dealing with this cold chain. People are nervous about making sure they do it right, that they don't thaw something out and then it gets wasted. And things will pick up the more experience we get.
Now, the governor also imposed a January 15th deadline for those to get it that are in that first phase. Who is included in that first phase? Is that just healthcare workers?
It is workers in healthcare settings who are at risk for increased exposure to COVID-19. So it's not just doctors and nurses, it's nurses' aides, it's orderlies, it's the maintenance people, the janitorial services people who are working in hospitals who may be exposed as well as outpatient, EMS, paramedics, individuals who are working in ambulatory or, community settings who are in settings where people are exposed to people with possible disease.
Now, of course, the second phase, or maybe 1A or 1B, I'm not sure how you've got it categorized, were elderly folks in nursing homes. Is that correct?
Well, I neglected to mention phase 1A kind of is in two parts because we
Okay.
have two different vaccines. So they're going in different directions. The Pfizer one, the super cold ones, going to hospitals and to other healthcare settings. The Moderna vaccine is easier to handle. It's like a normal vaccine. You keep it in a normal freezer. That's going to the nursing homes.
Okay.
As soon as we are done vaccinating residents and workers in long-term care facilities like nursing homes, then that will be available for other places, for healthcare workers, or as we move into the other phases. So
And-
you were going to ask about phase 1B.
Yeah, I was going to ask what's the next phase and who's
Yeah.
in the next phase? Yeah.
Who's in the next phase is several different groups, anyone aged 75 or older, because they are at much higher risk of severe disease or mortality, of dying from COVID-19 if they catch it. But also frontline essential workers who are at increased risk of contracting COVID. So these are not people in healthcare settings, but there's still people who are at increased risk. And some of them they're at increased risk just because they work with the general public.
Right.
People working in grocery stores who are the checkout clerks,
Right.
people
Yeah.
working in meat packing, poultry packing facilities because they can't keep distance from one another. So there's a long list of people who work in those sorts of services. But also any other workers in healthcare settings who maybe didn't get it in phase 1A, either because they were uncertain, that vaccine hesitancy, they weren't sure they wanted to go first, they can get vaccinated in 1B.
Okay. And when does 1B start, Dr. Kelly?
That depends on, that's a supply and demand
Okay.
question. So I don't have an exact date. We are estimating February, but you can't hold me to that because it
Okay.
depends upon supply. How much more vaccine do we receive? How fast can they make it and do their quality checks? And demand. How many people are asking for vaccine or might say, well, I don't want to get my vaccine right now. I'm going to wait, which is unfortunate. Personally, I would take my vaccine as soon as it's my turn, but I understand it's an individual choice.
So then after that group, 1B, who's next?
Who is next are all essential workers, the people who work in manufacturing, grocery, waste, electricity, but who aren't normally at increased risk by their job.
Okay.
But we need them. We need them to not get sick so that society continues to function. But
Mhm.
also that's where people age 65 to 74 can be vaccinated because
Okay.
they're at increased risk, not as high as the people over 75, but we know they're at increased risk. And also people who have chronic medical conditions of any age, people with diabetes, heart disease, lung disease. There's a whole list of different conditions, including obesity, people
Wow.
who are, have a body mass index over 30, people who are obese are at increased risk of severe COVID-19. We want to make sure we vaccinate them as soon as possible.
So with that timeline, and we've not even gotten up to just regular folks, you know what I mean?
Right.
There is a regular folks. When are we looking at everyone that wants a vaccine that can get a vaccine? And again, I know you don't have a crystal ball. You can't really, pinpoint an exact date and time, but that sounds like December of 2021.
Well, probably not December, but it might take as long as into the summer.
Yeah. Okay.
But another thing to consider is there are some other vaccines under development.
Right.
So if they get approved and get out there, then we'll have some more tools in our toolbox to
Yeah.
get more people vaccinated.
Yeah. Before you go, I do want to ask about the antibodies test. St. Luke, and if we can get that flyer up, St. Luke is doing an event for antibody testing. How important is that for folks to get those antibody tests?
You mean antibody tests, not
Yes, the test.
receiving antibodies. I don't think that that's as important as people might think. I mean, free COVID testing, that's important. You want to know whether you are asymptomatic. If you've been exposed or, you've traveled, you've been with family and friends, definitely I would recommend getting that COVID testing. The antibody testing, though, I have lukewarm feelings about, because even if you have antibodies in your blood, we're not certain how protective they are. Even if you have had COVID, we still recommend the vaccine because studies have shown the level of antibodies that are produced by infection are not as high as the level of antibodies produced by the vaccine. So even if you have the antibodies, good for you, but don't trust it. It's not 100% protective. There have been cases who have had reinfection even though they had COVID the first time. So I would encourage the COVID testing for sure. The antibody testing, if I knew my antibodies were positive, it wouldn't change my behavior because I still wouldn't consider myself protected.
Right. We know In It Together, SC and the Diabetes Advisory Council present Wellness Wednesday every Wednesday here on Coping with COVID. Can you tell us if there are any additional concerns for folks who may have those conditions like diabetes, even high blood pressure, heart disease, cancer, and smokers? We're getting ready to speak with Catherine Warner from the tobacco division. Are there additional concerns for those folks? Not necessarily for COVID, but as far as the vaccine is concerned.
Oh, all the more reason to get the vaccine. There is no evidence that the vaccine causes any complications in people who have those other conditions. And they did test that during the phase studies. And that's what's being tested right now is millions of people are receiving the vaccine. There have been no complications for people who have those medical conditions. Whereas what we do know is that people who have those conditions and catch the virus, they have a worse outcome. They have more severe disease and a higher risk of death. So the vaccine is even more important for them.
We're here at 2021, just 6 days in. What's your projection concerning the pandemic for this new year? When will we go back to business as usual?
We'll go back to business as usual when we have enough people who have received vaccine. And the estimates for that depend. It's really difficult to stop a pandemic as the numbers are increasing. So vaccine alone is not going to stop this pandemic. It's changing our behaviors or maintaining our behaviors if you're doing all the right things while we're waiting for enough people to get the vaccine. But it's estimated we're going to need at least 70 to 80% of people vaccinated before things really can return to normal.
Right. And that means continuing to social distance, wear your mask, wash your hands, and avoid large gatherings.
There are a couple of other things that I think people can think about while you're waiting to receive your COVID vaccine. Is there anything else that you can do? Well, if you haven't gotten your flu shot, I would get your flu shot. And the other thing is the pneumococcal vaccine, the pneumonia vaccine, Pneumovax. Pneumovax, I think, is, people don't think about it's a routine kids vaccine, but it's available for adults as well. It's available for adults 65 and older, or if you have one of those other medical conditions we just mentioned, diabetes, chronic heart, lung, liver disease, heavy alcohol use, smokers, the Pneumovax vaccine will help prevent not only pneumonia. There is evidence it helps. It's got cross reactivity. It will help prevent COVID-19. I cannot push, if you have a chronic medical condition or if you're over age 65, that I would encourage you to get your pneumonia vaccine. Or if you've got kids and you know that their immunizations aren't up to date because maybe this has been a crazy year and you haven't been able to keep those pediatrician appointments, but you want to protect your children. Talk to your pediatrician, find out if you're up to date on those immunizations, get the kids up to date because it'll help protect them against COVID as well.
Yeah, that's great information right there. A pneumonia, flu vaccine, make sure you're up to date because that will help protect you, from everything else that's out here. Dr. Jane Kelly, Assistant Epidemiologist with the state of South Carolina. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the great work that you're doing to help protect our state. And thank you for joining us, you and your dog.
And thank you for getting the word out. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much. That's Assistant State Epidemiologist Dr. Jane Kelly. In It Together, SC and the Diabetes Advisory Council of South Carolina present Wellness Wednesday every Wednesday here on Coping with COVID. I'm Trey Taylor, and coming up next, did you know there is a direct link between smoking and diabetes? I didn't know that either. It's fascinating information. And Catherine Warner with the DHEC Division of Tobacco will join us coming up next on Coping with COVID.
Coping with COVID and In It Together present Wellness Wednesday, brought to you by the Diabetes Advisory Council of South Carolina and DHEC's Division of Diabetes and Heart Disease Management.
Coping with COVID with Trey Taylor.
The end of the year is fastly approaching, and the time is now to start something new. Have you been putting off starting a nonprofit organization but don't know how? Join me on January the 9th at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. where I will walk you through the nonprofit application process. At the end of this class, all you'll need to do is hit the submit button. Again, join me January the 9th at 10 a.m.
People will be able to look 100 years from now. They will know how we got over. This makes it even more important that we shine this light.
Part of it also wasn't the fact that we couldn't have the physical graduation, but I also couldn't celebrate with my family out of town.
For me, I feel like this is a new normal. This is not going away anytime soon, I don't think.
Anything that's happened before can happen again. And the same thing is at play with this virus.
We are no longer in a building, and we've talked about church being, with us, in us.
Have you traveled abroad late in the past 6 months? We were trying to trace it back as early as November.
In It Together and the Diabetes Advisory Council of South Carolina present Wellness Wednesday on coping with COVID. If you need help with a diabetes prevention program, visit the In It Together website and Facebook page for more information and to help you get started. What better time than the beginning of the year? 'Tis the season for New Year's resolutions. And one of those New Year's resolutions oftentimes is to quit a habit. Smoking is one of the top ones. And did you know that there is a direct link between diabetes and tobacco? Well, I didn't know that either. Catherine Warner joins us from the Office of Tobacco Prevention and Control at DHEC to share this new information on how much smoking can affect our health and well-being. Catherine, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Trey. I know we're all excited to see 2020 in the rear view for sure.
Yeah. And and I know you're going to give us some information about how, if one of your resolutions is to quit smoking, how to kind of do that. But tell us about this link between smoking and diabetes. I mean, I think we thought we knew everything about what smoking could and could not do. Diabetes was not one of those things that we had been hearing about.
Right. Well, I think that the research came out fairly recently showing that there is a direct connection between smoking and diabetes. And so now is just the time to get that word out there. And I also want to do just a little bit of housekeeping before we really dive into it, because I think that it's important for people to understand that when DHEC references tobacco prevention and control, we are talking about commercial tobacco products, and we are not talking about tobacco products that are used for spiritual or medicinal purposes.
Oh, okay.
There's a difference.
All right. Look, I didn't know there was tobacco used for spiritual or medicinal purposes.
There is among the state's native communities and the nation's native communities.
Okay. I guess in the native communities. Yeah, girl. Because at the Baptist church, we're not doing no tobacco. But I digress. So tell us, what is the link between smoking and diabetes? This new research that you mentioned, what has it shown?
Well, before we talk about actually how smoking is linked to diabetes, it is linked to diabetes. I want to make sure before we talk about the mechanisms about how smoking causes diabetes, that we also discuss how smoking impacts existing diabetes.
Okay.
I think that it's important for anybody that's living with this condition to understand that if you smoke, it makes it much harder for you to control your blood sugar levels. And so, in fact, diabetics who smoke are much more likely to experience kidney problems, kidney disease, retinopathy. They have greater chances of the nerve damage and vascular problems. And in fact, smokers who are diabetic or rather diabetic smokers, are 30% more likely to develop heart disease. And that's a topic that's important for me just because there's a history of diabetes in my family. On my mother's side of the family, I lost my mother, my grandmother, and my uncle all from diabetes.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Complications related to heart disease caused by diabetes. My uncle was a very heavy smoker, and I've just always, wondered about that connection. And so for me, it's really important to get this information out now that we do have that solid evidence. We've always known that it makes diabetes worse, but yeah, we need to help spread the word that it can actually cause adult onset diabetes.
Wow, you're sitting here, talking about that, and I've said on the show before that there's a diabetes that runs in my family. It's like every other generation, typically of women. It missed me and got my brother. And both my parents were heavy smokers. Both of them died around 50, very young, of heart disease. My grandmother passed away when she was 70, but she was a smoker too and a diabetic. So, this is really interesting information.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm all about trying to help spread that word. So,
So what
anything I can do to help.
Yes. So what is it about the tobacco use that enhances one, that brings up the symptoms or makes it bad for those folks who have diabetes, one, and then two, if you don't have diabetes and you're a smoker, how does the tobacco use increase your risk?
Okay. So I want to put the disclaimer out here that I'm not a medical professional. I do get all of my information from science-based resources and from the CDC. And what we do know is that the link between smoking and how it causes diabetes is related to the inflammation and the oxidative stress. Both of those are associated with the development of adult onset diabetes. And then in addition to the inflammation and oxidative stress that, changes the cell structures, which, determines how well they respond to insulin. In addition to that, smoking increases the accumulation of abdominal fat, which is a risk factor for diabetes. And smokers tend to have higher levels of cortisol, which is the hormone that increases the blood sugar. And so all of that information together is what has led the CDC and other nationally renowned health professionals to conclude that smokers are 30 to 40% more likely to develop adult onset diabetes than non-smokers.
So let me ask you, if someone is a smoker and has diabetes, can quitting smoking help them? I mean, are they too far gone, or can they come back?
No. I would like to say that it is always a good time to quit. It doesn't matter how far along you are in your progression of your disease. I think that's an individual call for people, obviously, but from my standpoint, there's always a benefit.
Yeah.
And that's why, again, I'm so thankful to be on today because I want to help people understand that there are free resources available to help them quit smoking. So once they understand that the more they smoke, the higher they are at risk for diabetes.
Right.
And that there are steps that they can take to help manage their condition. And one of them includes quitting smoking.
Yeah.
So,
well, we've got the information up now about, the Quit Smoke helpline, and we'll share a little bit of that a little bit later. But let's talk a little bit about the COVID and diabetes and smoking.
Right. So it's, they all tie into each other. I think that most people that are living with diabetes are aware of the fact that they're more susceptible in general to any kind of viral infection. Smokers are the same way. So they have that in common. And so if you smoke and you have diabetes, you are even more susceptible to viral infections. And the reason that that's important is because when you have diabetes, that inflammation, that inflammation is what is going to prevent your body from being able to defend itself the way it needs to against a respiratory illness or a viral infection like COVID-19, flu, pneumonia, tuberculosis, anything like that. And then the same thing for smokers. It's just, It's the inflammation that's caused by smoking, but it's also the increased mucus that is caused by smoking. And since it's concentrated right there in your lungs, it just makes it that much harder for your lungs to fight those infections.
Right.
Smoking also weakens your overall immune system, which I don't think a lot of people are aware of that.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
So smoking weakens your immune system. It already makes it hard for your lungs to fight off an infection. And then if you have diabetes, you already have a difficult time fighting off infections because of the condition that you have. And so you put all of that together, and then enters COVID-19, and you've just really set yourself up for a much higher risk of complications. And by higher risk complications of severe illness, what we mean is hospitalization, admission to the intensive care unit, or intubation.
Yeah, I mean, we know obviously that anyone with pre-existing conditions, we keep hearing this over and over and over again, are more susceptible for COVID. I don't think we think, like you said, that smoking is a pre-existing condition. We're thinking heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, not smoking.
Exactly. And so, the CDC just updated their webpage that I believe is going to scroll across your banner about the medical conditions that put you at risk. And you can click on each one. And so diabetes is included in that. But then they also have risk factors. So it's medical conditions and risk factors. And then smoking is listed under risk factors. So I think that's very important for people to understand. That information was made available this summer, and we've just been trying to do what we can to get that information out to people, because you're right. You think heart disease, COPD, diabetes, but you don't stop to think about how smoking weakens your immune system and can set you up for severe illness.
Right. We're talking to Catherine Warner. She is with, the Office of Tobacco Prevention and Control at DHEC. And we've been talking about the link between smoking and diabetes, COVID and diabetes, COVID and smoking. So let's talk a little bit about, how do you quit? I mean, you said, because some people may think, Catherine, well, I've been smoking ever since I was 15 years old or whatever, or I just started smoking. Look, a couple of people probably just started smoking during COVID to deal with the stress.
Right.
So how do you quit? I mean, the habits are hard to break.
They are hard to break. And I always tell people this in all of my communications efforts about quitting smoking is be kind to yourself. Don't be hard on yourself. You set yourself up for failure that way. And if you don't succeed the first time, that's okay. Keep trying. It takes the average smoker 12 times before they can quit successfully. 12 times. So don't beat yourself up if you don't get it right the first time. But I think the first step would be to call the South Carolina Tobacco Quit Line for free help. It's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you can connect with a licensed, trained, certified quit coach. And that quit coach will help you develop a plan, your quit plan. That's the number one thing that you can do, is come up with your quit plan. That's when you set a date. You start to identify what your triggers might be and start planning for how you'll deal with any relapses that you have. I would say involve your friends and family, because if you have support for you while you're doing it, let them know. They can not only hold you accountable, but maybe if they're tobacco users, if they're smokers, then maybe they can be more aware about not smoking around you, and removing all of those, what we call smoking cues, those reminders, the ashtrays, the paraphernalia, the lighters, the things that go with it.
Yes.
But what we've seen is that people who call the South Carolina Tobacco Quit Line at 1-800-QUIT-NOW are more than twice as likely to succeed in quitting smoking just by calling and engaging with a quit coach. And then if you are eligible to receive the free quit medications, which they do offer through that program, you can be eligible to receive free gum, patch, and lozenges to help you with cravings. And if you combine the counseling with the quit medications, you're more than 3 times likely to quit successfully. So if it's out there and it's free, take advantage of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've got the information on the screen. It's 1-800-QUIT-NOW. And as Catherine says, free help 24/7. quit medication available, gum packs, lozenges, as she said. It's free if you need it, and it is available. Michelle wants to know, Catherine, what about secondhand smoke? What risks come from being around a smoker?
Oh, that's a great question. There are risks. Non-smokers are also, I think the statistic is about 30% more likely to develop heart disease and lung cancer just from being exposed to secondhand smoke.
Wow.
Yes, the Surgeon General has issued a report detailing the crisis for non-smokers who are exposed to secondhand smoke, which is why it's so important to make sure that you don't smoke in your home. You designate a smoke-free area. It's important to make sure that your workplace is smoke-free so that employees can be protected,
right.
Or customers can be protected. But right, there's secondhand smoke. There's even thirdhand smoke. Secondhand smoke and both thirdhand smoke also trigger very severe asthma reactions in people that have asthma, which can land them in the hospital. That's very important for, I know, a lot of children that live in multi-unit housing facilities, where they're in like an apartment complex and their neighbor smokes, but they don't smoke. It still comes in through the ventilation. It comes in through cracks and crevices. And then those children have an asthma attack. It can be very problematic.
What is third-hand smoke?
Third-hand smoke is the residue that is left behind from the secondhand smoke.
On your clothes and things like that?
It's on your clothes, on your hands, and it sticks around for a very long time. And it's a concentrated amount of the chemicals that are found, the chemicals and the toxins that are found in the exhalation from smoking. It's what you see if you've ever been in somebody's apartment or house and they smoked a lot and then they moved and they pull the furniture back from the wall or take a picture down, and you can see where, things were hanging. All of that grime and dirt around there is what's known as third-hand smoke. And you can transfer it to infants and children. You can transfer it to people that have medical conditions. And so it's important to understand that, I keep coming back to asthma because I think that's the most important one. If you are living with somebody who has that sensitive condition and you smoke, it's very important that, before you come home and handle that baby or pick up that toddler, that you would come in and wash your hands and change your clothes so that when you hold the child, they're not getting the third-hand smoke on them.
Wow. I always wondered about that. And thank you, Michelle, for your question about secondhand smoke. But I was going to ask that, what about just smelling it on, because smokers often smell like smoke. You know what I mean? They just, their cars, I never forget, this is a long time ago. It's a crazy story, but a friend of mine, and I was living in Raleigh or Charlotte years ago, and I was out of town. A friend of mine used my car because he kept my son, and he's a smoker. And when I came back, and I don't even think I was gone a couple of days, the car smelled so much like smoke. And I remember thinking, even then, I wonder if this is, first of all, it took a long time to get the smell out, but I wonder if that was dangerous, if that was harmful, just smelling the smoke of when the person was there. He had been long gone, you know what I mean? So.
I think like I said, I think it's important for people that have asthma mainly and children, because it is a toxic material. And so if your immune system is still developing or you would have trouble breathing as a result of the exposure from it, then I think that's the real possibility. But I think most people, third-hand smoke is just more gross.
Yeah.
I just think it's more, I didn't want my car to smell like that.
Right.
And now it took like 3 for it to go away. Or if you moved into an apartment and you're thinking, gosh, I really wish my apartment didn't smell like this. But I think for most people, third-hand smoke isn't as dangerous as second-hand smoke is the culprit there, because you are actually breathing in that smoke and taking it into your lungs.
Right.
Even in small quantities, which means that maybe you're not inhaling the same quantity of those toxins, but you are still inhaling those toxins.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, Catherine has shared this information earlier. SC Tobacco Quit Line, 1-800-QUIT NOW. If you want to quit smoking, and listen, we're not saying it's easy, but it is possible. And here are some free resources available for you. And listen, the first of the year is the perfect time to do it. A lot of people are, focusing on their New Year's resolutions. But listen, we're talking now about a respiratory disease virus that is a health pandemic that affects our respiratory system. So, New Year's aside, health pandemic would be a great reason to want to quit smoking now for your health. And especially now, since we see there's so much of a direct link between smoking, tobacco use, and so many other diseases. Again, Catherine Warner with the DHEC Tobacco Prevention and Control. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for sharing this information and for your passion in doing this based on your own personal experience. I appreciate you. And please come back again and share some more information.
Yes, thank you for letting me share.
Absolutely. That's Catherine Warner with DHEC on coping with COVID. You may see on the bottom of the screen, we've got our producer, Lauren Grant, put a news update that there's been a breach at the White House amidst protesters. President Trump had a rally earlier today during the electoral confirmation of President-elect Biden, and President Trump's followers have breached the White House. Now the Senate has been shut down. People have been evacuated out. I will continue to update you as more information becomes available. And if there was ever a time to pray, it's been a time to pray. Listen, if you have a story that could help someone cope with COVID, please email copingwithtraytaylor@gmail.com. We would love to get you on the show and spotlight you, your project or initiative. If you have a product or service that could help someone cope with COVID, please contact me at copingwithtraytaylor@gmail.com. And we'd love for you to be a proud sponsor, just like In It Together, the South Carolina Diabetes Advisory Council, the City of Columbia Office of Business Opportunities, and Palmetto Media Connections. If you want to find out more about a diabetes prevention program, please log on to the In It Together SC website or go to their Facebook page and get the information you need from In It Together. Now, next Wellness Wednesday, In It Together, SC and the Diabetes Advisory Council of South Carolina, we're going to talk to those on the front lines. The healthcare workers share their experiences with the pandemic and the vaccine. That's coming up next Wednesday on Coping with COVID. Now, tomorrow, The Color of Law, the forgotten history of how the government segregated America. Attorney Tamika Isaac Devine, Dr. Ronald Epps, and Dr. Bobby Donaldson talk about this book and a webinar hosted by Historic Columbia and how this is happening right now. As always, I leave you with a reading from Jesus Calling, but I want to read you yesterday's Jesus Calling because this was so good to me. And this was so just personal. It was just so eye-opening to me. It says, you can achieve a victorious life by living in deep dependence on me. People usually associate victory with success, not failing or stumbling, not making mistakes. But those who are successful in their own strength tend to go their own way, forgetting about me. This is the part that resonated with me. It is through problems and failures, weakness and neediness that you learn to rely on me. True dependence is not simply asking me to bless what you have decided to do. It's coming to me with an open mind and heart, inviting me to plant my desires within you. It may not be what you think. I may infuse within you a dream that seems far beyond your reach. You know that in yourself, you can't achieve such a goal. Thus begins your journey of profound reliance on me, Jesus says. It is a faith walk, taken one step at a time, leaning on me as much as you need. This is not a path of continual success, but of multiple failures. However, each failure is followed by a growth spurt, nourished by increased reliance on me. Enjoy the blessedness of a victorious life through deepening your dependence on me. That's your Jesus Calling. This was yesterday's Jesus Calling. That was so good. I just had to share it with you. I'm Trey Taylor. Until the next time, I wish you peace and abundant blessings. I ask you to please continue to wear your mask over your nose and under your chin. And we look forward to seeing you next time on Coping with COVID. See ya.
Coping with COVID and In It Together present Wellness Wednesday, brought to you by the Diabetes Advisory Council of South Carolina and DHEC's Division of Diabetes and Heart Disease Management.
Coping with COVID with Trey Taylor.